teach some concept I want everyone to know. So I'm calling the concept today beliefs and text. Beliefs and text. I want to share briefly with you an anecdote about an experience, a delightful experience that Meirav and I had yesterday, and then lead into the discussion. We were at the Shuk HaKarmel, a local, really nice part of Tel Aviv, where there's lots of shops, boutiques, outdoor stalls. It leads into an actual, very traditional kind of shuk where you have vegetable stands and hawkers and things like that. They merge quite nicely. And so we sat down near a group of men having a meeting. We merged into the meeting. They found they asked me what I was doing. I was actually studying for today, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm studying." "Why are you studying?" I said, I teach Torah. "Oh, come over. We have a question for you." So word to the wise. When an Israeli says, "I have a question for you," they mean they have an answer for you. What they want to do is they want to ask you a question and give you their preset answer. So in my naivete, I thought they had a question for me. So they asked me the question, and the question had to do with a couple Torah portions ago. Why would God send out spies when God and ask their opinion about the land when God already knew what they were going to say? Now, I've heard this my entire teaching life of people who believe what I call the three O's and the B about the God of the Bible. The three O's and the B come from medieval theology, not in the Bible, certainly not in rabbinic literature, but somehow it's been engraved in people's minds, a concept of God that is not biblical. What are the three O's and the B? That God is omniscient, all-knowing. That God is omnipotent, all-powerful. God is omnipresent, present in all places at all times in the same way. And God is benevolent. Three O's and the B. So people say to me, God is omniscient. So my proof text against the idea is God did not know where Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. He had already lost track of them. God was clearly not omnipresent, because if God were omnipresent, he would have been right there with them when they were hiding. And God is omnipotent, not omnipotent, because God did not have the power to make Adam and Eve obey God's rules. So this entire idea, and by the way, as far as the benevolence goes, can point to you many examples in the Bible where God's main quality does not appear to be benevolence. So in any case, in the first real narrative we have in the Bible, the Garden of Eden story, all three ideas are refuted, but people hold on to them. And it seems to make sense because if one is going to have an idea about God, now remember, it's not the God I believe in. I have a much more Kabbalistic, Lurianic, Hasidic orientation. But let's say, if you don't mind my saying so, the God that people don't believe in, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and benevolent. The Bible doesn't say that. So therefore, anytime the God of the Bible does something, for example, go send out the spies, let me see what they have to say, they would ask, why would God do such a thing if God already knew the answer? Well, the Bible does not present God as being omniscient. God is surprised all the time by what the people are going to do. The God of the Bible is not omnipotent because people defy God all the time. And of course, God is not omnipresent. Now, this is a little bit startling for this group of people to hear someone who has the temerity to call himself a rabbi. Therefore, I had to clarify very quickly that I was a Reform rabbi, which gave me a great deal of latitude in my beliefs. And then a person challenged me with a core belief. He says, "Do you not believe that the world was created from nothing? Yesh min ayin, that there's nothingness and then there's yesh, then there's isness, as it were." And I said, well, we're not discussing what I believe, we're studying what the text says. And Genesis 1:1 to 1:3 does not say that God created the world from nothing. So the person, of course, said, Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. As you've heard me say interminably, that's actually not what the Hebrew says. If you look at modern commentators and even Rashi, the Hebrew is not Bereshit bara Elohim, it's Bereshit bero Elohim. So whoever vocalized the text, Bereshit bara, made a serious error. And I'll explain the reason to you for any Hebrew speakers. The Hebrew word Bereshit requires a noun after it. So Bereshit bero is in the beginning of God's creating. It's a gerund, which functions as a noun. In the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth being unformed and void. So what the first verse of the Bible does, it sets out the situation in which God creates light. So Rashi says, Zelo sipur devarim. It's not an account of one thing after another, but it's setting out the circumstances in which light was created. So first of all, you'd have to know that it can't be vocalized Bereshit bara, but rather Bereshit baro, in the beginnings of God's creating. It doesn't say that creation came from nothing. It actually sets out the circumstances of creation. Now, is this new with Reform rabbis? No, because the Talmud spends a great deal of time talking about, and I hope we'll talk about it sometime, of all of the things that pre-existed creation. All the things that pre-existed creation are in the Midrash. Why? The Midrash breaks down the word Breshit as the Midrash does. The Midrash creatively just pulls words apart. They take the word bara, created, and sheet in Aramaic is six. So they say, God created six things before God created the earth. So we'll look at this in Midrash Rabbah sometime. So the whole idea that God created something from nothing is contradicted simply by reading the text and asking whether this idea of creating something from nothing is a Jewish idea. Absolutely not, because the Talmud and the Midrash teach something quite the contrary. So here, what I wanted to share with you is many people have ideas, what I'll call deot ve'emunot, emunot ve'deot, beliefs and opinions about what the text says and what Judaism says that are simply incorrect. Or it might be one opinion, might be a minority opinion, but there's great diversity in Jewish thought, especially when you bring up the Talmud and the Midrash. So there's two things I find that many people who have, as it were, heard a lot of Dvar Torahs from rabbis who don't take the time to teach exactly what the text says before they offer deot ve'emunot, beliefs and opinions, or opinions and beliefs, which I take great labor to do. First, what does the text actually say? How do we understand the text? And then what beliefs and opinions might be derived from the text? And what beliefs and opinions does the text suggest, but maybe not be derived from the text? I believe it's important to tease all of those out very precisely. The reason is, I don't want any of you to walk into a conversation where you say Judaism says this or the text says that, and someone says, that's actually not what Judaism teaches, and the text actually doesn't say that. The gentlemen that we encountered, they were all relatively knowledgeable, quite intelligent, knew something that they had heard from somewhere, and didn't believe any of it. One person summed it up when I explained a little bit about how I understood it. He said, there's no end of commentaries. There's no end of rabbis interpreting the Torah. We said, V'hakol shtuyot, and everything is just silly stupidity. I said, well, I beg to differ. And I tried to figure out why a truly intelligent person would say that all of the rabbinic commentaries is shtuyot, just idiocy. And it came down to this. If there are so many different opinions and they all contradict each other, then how do we know which is true? So if they all can't be true, then none is true. Then it's just a farrago of opinions that make no sense. And I really get it. And so what I shared with them was, it's extremely important to make a distinction between what the text says, first of all, the biblical text, because we have the text. It's a finite text. It's a set text. It's engraved, as it were. We can't change the text, although we can create better readings of the text from our knowledge of Hebrew grammar. And from that, understand the words of the Bible. And there's an immense body of reference literature that helps us build the meanings that the words create, that the syntax creates, that the literary units create. And of course, there's the great diversity of thought in the Midrash and the Talmud. So when a person comes and says, there are so many opinions, what's true? I'd like to share with you an approach if you ever have a conversation like this. Our question is not what is true, as if there's a final truth of what the text means. There is a final truth of what the text says. I think we can more or less say that the printed editions we have today are reliable. From scholarly analysis, some of the vocalization might be incorrect, brought in the 6th, 7th century by people who didn't understand the text as well as we understand the text. but we're talking about 99% accuracy that this is the text of the Bible. Now, so the text is fixed. Meaning is an entirely different thing. There are many, many levels of meaning. So when a person says, it's all shtuyot, my answer would be, right, if you want to give the text the attention, first of all, do you know what the text says? And even if you don't know Hebrew, there are very good aids, apps and online where you can really understand the meaning of one verse at a time. One that I would really recommend to you is called Bible Hub. Bible Hub. You go into it. I prefer the online to the app version, but it's really endless in the amount of sources that it gives you as far as parallel text, scholarly apparatus, interpretation. It's Christian, but as far as the scholarly apparatus to find out what the text actually says, the text before opinions and beliefs, it's a great site. And the next thing is when a person says, I believe that God created the world from nothing. This is a Greek Aristotelian point of view. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying that the Bible shouldn't say that. What I'm saying is the Bible doesn't say that. So we should all distinguish between what the text actually says, number one, and distinguish that from beliefs and opinions, which might not line up with the text, which is okay with me. I'm not saying that you can only have beliefs that align with the text. I have most of my religious beliefs don't align with the Bible, but I distinguish between my beliefs and opinions versus what the biblical text says. And next, as I'll go into in just a few moments, there is a vast diversity in the Talmud and the Midrash on the unspoken background of the text and the meaning of the text. And I would say, even though there's great diversity and contradictory opinions, that doesn't mean they're silly. How do you assess the worth of an opinion? I would say, does it connect to the text, number one? And does it have some kind of substantial truth that it's trying to communicate, even if not communicated with the text, not communicated from the text? I'll give you an example in just a moment. So when I read the Midrash and the Talmud, I'm not saying, are they reliable as interpreters of the Bible? Because I don't even think they pretend to be. What they want to say is something like this. They call this the hammer on the rock. You take the hammer on the rock and it sparks, and the sparks is the meaning. Now, the rock is the Bible. The hammer is the human mind. The human mind is the patish al hasela. It's the hammer on the rock. The sparks are the meaning that we create out of it. So every time I study the text, I'm looking for what the text actually says. I want to know what the Bible says, whether I agree with it or not. Distinguish that from my beliefs and opinions, and then understand in my engagement with the text, my mind is the patish, the hammer. The text is the sela, the rock. And as the hammer of the mind hits the sela of the rock, the sparks are where meaning happens.